It was 1997, towards Christmas time, about the 18th of December, and I was a railway worker, a supervisor at Cloncurry. I was there on duty with two other guys, and we decided around about a little bit after 9 p.m. to take a journey around and do a loop through town and back along our railway line to check our points and sightings. Should have taken about 10 minutes, but we got a little caught up because as we were travelling through town and out towards the Mount Isa side of town to turn left onto Powerhouse Road, which brought us back into town, we came across a very strange light in the sky. The light attracted our attention so much because it seemed unusual to see this thing, so it made us want to investigate further. So we travelled to our next turn-off and discovered that this light was still with us. It was 30 or so metres in the air. It looked like a landing or like a work light on a helicopter. We felt maybe it wasn't a helicopter, so just to dispel any disagreements, we turned the car off. We were close enough to it to ascertain whether or not it was going to be a helicopter or not. It had no engine noise, no marker lights, just that one light. And we came to the conclusion after that first experience that it was definitely not a helicopter of any sort. So we travelled further along. We'd made a decision we were still deciding whether to head back a particular way to work. The light itself decided to move away from us. It went up into the sky and it did its best impersonation of a star, for the want of a better term. It went above our town lookout, which was a bit of a distance from us, a couple of kilometres away, and it stayed there for a very short period of time, not very long at all, but we determined that we could still see it because we could see another star in the sky, which I thought was the evening star at the time, and it really looked out of place near it. So it looked like it was doing its best impression of being a star. So along we went a bit further, and we decided to pull up again because it came back over towards us as we travelled along Powerhouse Road. So at this point, we decided to pursue it because it did follow us along Powerhouse Road, but then it veered away, and I've made a decision with my workmate Butch to go and down towards the river where it looked like it was headed to have a look at it, and we did. So we turned along and down to the river rather than going straight back into work. At that point, we got to the river, and the light was there. It met us at the river. It crossed the river to the other side, and it dulled down. It was a dull colour. It was a yellow, red, amberish colour, and it was near the foliage of a tree. Now, when we pulled up there, we decided that we needed it to come back up towards us. We felt that we'd disturbed it, and that's why it had become dull. And we turned the lights of the car off and the engine. We're in complete darkness, and we did that to make sure, or to try and prove to ourselves that it was the noise and the light that was affecting it. And we stayed in the car for a little while, not long, a minute or two maybe, and it glowed back up to its star-like quality, and it came over the river towards the bottom of the car. And at that point I decided to tell my workmate Butch it was coming, and he agreed, but he was panicking, so he kept underneath the dash of the car, and I said I'll get out and have a look at it, and he called me a few obscenities because he was scared. I was scared too, but I really wanted a close look, and it came over towards me. Now it got about 10 metres away and just above head height, and at that point I decided that I would walk to the left and walk to the right a few paces and asked Butch if he could see what was going on, and from the safety sanctuary of the car, which did. It did go back and forth a little bit. It stayed away from me. It didn't want to come any closer than that 10 or so metres, but it was basically about 10 metres away from me. And, oh look, I just was so excited, I called another workmate, on the remaining workmate, on the two-way radio to get him down to have a look at it as well. And he came down in the car and he shone his lights on it as he came down, and he never got to see it at that point straight away because it didn't like the light. It dulled down. It went behind the foliage of this gum tree, half in, half out, and it went black. So black, like a silhouette, we could still see it against the night sky. So he came down, he was shining his torch around. We tried to calm him down because he thought we were playing a joke on him. We wanted to really show him this light. We got him to turn his torch off and be quiet and turn the car off and everything, and the light decided to shine up again, still from its position behind the tree foliage, and it glowed an orange dull colour. And my workmate, got to see it as well. He completely lost his mind. He was scared, senseless, I felt. I'm sure he probably wouldn't say that now, but he was at the time. We all were. And then he started toing and froing with my other workmate about what it might be. But because it was so affected by the sound and the noise, I walked over to the railway bridge, climbed up onto it, which was nearest to the south, and it came over towards me. And it left them, it came towards me, and it came just above head height towards me. And it at first stayed about 10 or so metres away, but when I kept quiet and said nothing, it came right up to me. But it just kept out of my reach, and I just kept staring at it. I just had a second of it just there, and I thought I could probably almost touch you, and I tried to walk forward, and it backed right off to about another 10 metres away. And so I again backtracked. It came to me again, and for a second only, it really came just in front of me again, and I tried my best to keep very still, but it wouldn't come any closer. And as soon as I walked forward, it backed away, and it eventually came back to me and dropped down about chest height, dulled its colour to like an incandescent colour of a headlight of a car or truck, and it shot along the railway line away from where I was towards Mount Isa at an incredible speed, from nothing to 100 or so k's an hour. Just shot straight off, followed the railway line and out of sight. And at that point I went all the way along the railway bridge trying to find it, and made my way back because I'd realised it was gone by then. Not a mirage, no. We were inside of quite a deep depression of a riverbank, in a riverbed, either in the middle of a waterway, really.
And was there bush around you?
Yeah, there was bush around. Look, if somebody were to try and shine light in there, I'd say good luck, because we were right inside an area there where, and to be honest, we're in a small town that's quite isolated. The next major township or city, small city, is 118 odd k's away. Technology to do that sort of stuff, whether it be lasers or whatever, that sort of stuff, it just doesn't add up there. What I made sure of was that I had other people with me, not because I was scared, which I was, but I wanted more than just myself and another person looking at this, and I wanted different angles. As a kid growing up, you'd see on telly UFO experiences and things like that, and them getting debunked as being, will-o'-the-wisps or plasma balls or things like that, and or just a trick of the eye. But I just don't know how you get a trick of the eye from those sorts of angles, from three different people's perspectives. I was at times looking straight on, and it was opposite me across the river, and I would walk one side and walk to the left and then walk to the right 3 steps, and it would have a delayed reaction of a second or so and then waft over and do the same thing. So it would waft over to the left, wait for me to move, and then I'd walk to the right and it would waft over to the right. At that point, Butch, who was at right angles to me, and it could see the same thing happening. So, if it's the trick of the eye, maybe he wouldn't see anything, but he could clearly see everything happening. I felt at every point in time during our journey with it that it was well aware of keeping its distance, and it was sussing us out, for the want of a better term. It was definitely affected by sound. When Raymond and Butch were busy arguing about the situation we were in, it got smaller. It kept its distance. It got further away, and it lost its radiance. When we first came down to the river and the noise of our car and headlights and everything weren't suitable for it, it drifted across the waterway, almost like it knew we couldn't get across that water. It could have stopped anywhere along the bank on our side, but it went across the waterway. And it hid half in and half out of the foliage of a tree. It was like unbelievable. What does that? What would do that? Maintain this height up in the sky and be half in and out of the foliage of a tree? It's like it needed to still see us, but it couldn't quite hide itself entirely. And also, when it was really disturbed by the noise and lights being shone at it, it went black. And I thought, oh well, it's gone. But after a few seconds of staring in the same position, I could see it was still there, but it was black. So we just came away from that. I think I recall talking to Butch about that, coming to the conclusion that it was there all along. And it was using its light to camouflage itself or give us a perception that it was in a different place to where it actually was. Almost like it had an understanding of how our eyes work and how far to keep away and how close to come without actually being able to touch it. I was a person that liked my privacy, so I also felt I was under a lot of pressure not to tell many people about this, just close family. But the guys I was with, they told everybody straight away and kept telling people. And as time progressed, people that I worked with, older guys and other station crew, and that they would come up to me and tell me about their experiences that they'd had in the past. Some of them had some what sounded like incredible experiences with unidentified flying objects and min-mins and things that were similar. I just even got guys coming up to me that that had sworn not to tell anybody under any circumstances that they'd seen anything. And but they just felt it was, I guess they just felt, well, this guy's suffered enough ridicule. We know what it's like, and whether he chose to tell people or not. And so, I'll tell him my story. And I think it was more so to get it off their chest. So some of these guys had seen things that were 20 years prior to that.
Can you give us some of those stories?
Oh, I can give you some.
You don't have to give us names, but
Yep.
you can tell us the stories.
I can give you some examples. There were 2 train crews. So back in those days, they used to have 3 guys on a train, two at the front and 1 at the back. One was a guard at the back of the train, and they had to cross trains. And now it was in the middle of the day. They were crossing these trains. Well, I should say it was daylight. I can't remember if it was in the middle of the day or earlier in the morning, but they had to cross these trains. And this was between Cloncurry and Mount Isa, which is quite a long stretch of line. It's a good 400 k's or so. But on this track, they had to cross, and to do it, one train had to pull in clear and let another one cross it and go through. Well, they all arrived at a similar time to do this crossing, and while they were there, they found off to one side a big superstructure. It looked like a rusty warehouse that was just sitting out in the middle of a levelled area which they had never seen before. And one of the guy that came to me said to me, we'd never seen this thing, so it was like, when was this put up? And it looks like it's been here 100 years. It's rusty, and what is this thing? And so he got on the radio and he radioed the other drivers on the other train and his crew, and he said, can you see what we're seeing? This thing off, I think it was to the south. And they said, yeah. When did that go up? And he said, I don't know. And as soon as they ascertained it was there, it took off. It left the ground and shot off up into the sky. And I hope they still have decided it's okay to tell the story, because he did come to me in confidence, but I'm pretty sure he'd be right with it. But he came to me, and when he was telling me, he said, I just couldn't believe it. He was laughing when he said it. It was like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, like as in shock.
They were, yeah, basically, yeah. It was they were stunned to the point where they as they were crossing, they said, they asked, did you see that? And they went, yep. And he said, can we just make a pact never to let anybody know we've seen this? And they did. And I don't know how true to the pact they were, but no, obviously this guy had no reason to lie to me. He came to me to tell me about this. It was like he was getting it off his chest. When I first got there, and I listened to these, when I first started working there, and I was a young bloke, I was 17 or so, and I listened to all these crazy stories about people seeing min lights, and I just remember thinking to myself, people drink way too much out here. But the fact of the matter is, and I'm very sceptical, so, and I realise I'm sceptical to the point where I have to see something for myself to believe it exists. And even when somebody says, yeah, look, I saw one of them, I think to myself, did you? Did you really see it? And I feel that there's just been a lot of people that have been genuine that have come up to me and said, yeah, look, we've seen this, and we can talk to you now because we know you've seen one too. So yeah, there's definitely a population of these things. Something's happening out there. It's always probably happened, long before we came along even. But I just feel that you'll probably find the more you look, the more you'll see out there. It just seems to be one of those areas that everyone has a story to tell.